All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS day. It's a Monday night slate. We got a lot of interesting news items, really. It's a long laundry list of questionable marks. Do you see any starting points, or is this kind of one of those slates where we're just going to have to break it down really deep to kind of figure out what to do?
We have, if you're not late swapping tonight, or if you can't late swap, I honestly would probably just skip the slate. I think the number one thing that we got is Miles Turner out. And so Isaiah Jackson on both sites seems like the clear first player. It's just, there's no one behind him. And even if he gets in foul trouble, like, okay, maybe Rick Carlisle takes him out, whatever, but they've shown no interest. Like, we don't even have Jarace Walker in the model. The only other big man that we actually have in the model is Obi Toppin. I don't think Aaron Naismith can really play center. I mean, the Clippers could go small, so that's a possibility. But I think Isaiah Jackson is the clear top play on the slate. And okay, it looks like so his ownership wasn't showing that high before, but now it seems more appropriate. I will say, like, power forward on FanDuel at 4,700, I think it's just the easiest plug and play. Center on DraftKings at 5K, he's still an awesome play. I wish he was power forward eligible there, though. I mean, we have 11 games today. There's 22 starting centers. But I think he's probably just appropriate good chalk.
Yeah, I would agree. And to your point, I mean, with Jalen Smith out, they really don't have anyone. I honestly think Toppin has a good chance to get a little bit more run in that game. I'm really shocked at the line that we're getting. They're really expecting Tyrese Halliburton to hold up and play really well in that game. So 3.5 point spread is still a very high over and under. I'm a little bit shocked at that didn't move with Turner still out as well.
Yeah, and the Clippers have been good recently. I know they started off terrible when James Harden got there, but they've been really good. And Paul George is expected to be back tonight. And, to answer Jose Morales' early question, which pay-ups would we recommend starting with? I mean, my big decision is so on FanDuel, Kawhi Leonard's a little bit priced up, so I think I prefer Paul George over there. But on DraftKings, both of them are a little bit too cheap. I don't necessarily want to play both in my one lineup. But I think that playing either of them or even James Harden at the much lower ownership is a pretty good call.
Yeah. And then everyone else is just saying money to be made, of course. Yes. Let's get it. Yes. And then we do have a question about would Andre Drummond potentially be a good pivot there? Kind of hoping for Vooch to get in foul trouble.
Just predicting foul trouble is not something that I'm ever interested in doing. So my answer is no. Not to say that Andre Drummond's like unplayable, but I wouldn't even get there. I mean, in my 20 lineups, I don't know if I'd get there. If I'm playing 150, then maybe a few percent. But I mean, the price on DraftKings is good, 4,100.
Yeah, it's plausible there. And I mean, with the line too, maybe that game blows out faster. I personally think that line is strange, just with my man Kobe White just dominating. I don't know. I do want to talk about Cleveland as well. We do have a lot of injuries there, and it's strange because, yes, we have seen this before with this team, so everyone's probably properly priced, but we are getting Jared Allen as center power forward eligible on FanDuel. He's only coming in at 6% owned. He got a lot of minutes in the last game, and I would say maybe these minutes could go up by 2 or so with Evan Mobley still out, and then also, obviously, we have Darius Garland out. Are you getting to anyone for Cleveland at all?
The only player from Cleveland that I have so far in my exposures is my favorite tournament play, Max Strus.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially on FanDuel, a little bit cheaper there. But again, like no one's pulling in ownership there, so I think it could be a nice spot.
And that's FanDuel specific for Max Strus. The 6,900 on DraftKings is a little bit too much, I think, but I like the 6,100. Yeah.
And then just kind of moving on, we have a lot of potential injury spots. I say we just touch on the ones in which we haven't seen too much of. So like a little bit of Detroit with their two bigs out. Jalen Duren's out. Isaiah Stewart's out. The expected starting lineup is Bogdanovich as the 4 and then Bagley as the center. James Wiseman actually played pretty well in the last game. He's projected to be a good value on this game. I would say he could potentially be a pivot off of a chalky Isaiah Jackson, especially, I guess it doesn't work out on FanDuel, but kind of what are your thoughts there? Because he's pulling in as a good value play, but he's also pulling in zero ownership specifically on DraftKings. And not too chalky on FanDuel for what it's worth.
Yeah, James Wiseman, 5,900. If that's what's necessary tonight, I'm just not going to win. But the 4,100 on FanDuel is good. I'm hesitant to play cheap centers on FanDuel, especially on a slate where we have so many good centers. And so if we're playing James Wiseman on FanDuel, we really have to hit the studs in the other positions. But at 4,100, 13% ownership, I think it's fine. I will say Marvin Bagley looks really good, especially with the power forward eligibility on FanDuel.
Yeah, that helps. It seems like already just right out the bat, it seems like maybe more of a FanDuel day. I do want to collect your thoughts on Miami as well. So Miami, we saw Tyler Hero come back, we saw Bam come back, but they didn't play that many minutes. And I'm curious, we have Bam to get 32, we have Tyler Hero to get 29. First and foremost, do you think that is going to occur? And then I'll note Kyle Lowry's out as well.
It's a lot of minutes. Yeah, I'm not really interested in getting to anyone from this game or from this team anyway.
Yeah.
Minnesota, not that interested either. I still want to play Rudy Gobert, but his price is a little bit high. But it's just all these guys are priced for Harrow and Bam being out. They haven't really adjusted back down yet. And so, yeah, it's plausible that Duncan Robinson could get there. You know, Jaime Jaquez has been great off the bench, but a lot of Jaime Jaquez's minutes are coming in the absence of Tyler Harrow. And so we'll have to see how this rotation shakes out. But if you get 0 Miami guys in your exposures tonight, I think that's fine.
So I was kind of bringing that up because I thought I might want to get to like Josh Richardson if we were going to see Tyler Hero not play, because we saw this before when Tyler Hero was out and Kyle Lowry was out or something like that, where Josh Richardson played the point. And, you know, pricing, I think he could have been a good play, but now we have Hero projected at 30 minutes. I don't exactly love that.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Lowry out is interesting, but with Tyler Harrow back, yeah, I got 0 Miami in my DraftKings run, and I got 0 Miami in my FanDuel run of 150. So, you know,
Fair.
like I said, if one of these guys is necessary tonight, I mean, none of them are coming in at ownership anyway. So,
Yeah. And then let's just talk about, we got a few more. So we'll talk about Charlotte, a little bit of Memphis, and then a little bit of Dallas. So Charlotte's going to be difficult. Miles Bridges was denied access at the border, so he's not going to play tonight. And then Mark Williams expected to sit, so Nick Richards expected to start. We do have PJ Washington expected to play, Gordon Hayward expected to play, Terry Rozier expected to play, but we don't know for sure. One of those three could also sit.
So I generally like PJ Washington, and with no Mark Williams, he's you know, in line to play some center minutes. He's probably going to come off the bench for Nick Richards, but I mean, why is he pulling so much ownership already? He's a fine play,
Yeah.
but it's an 11 game slate. I don't think we have to really get there that much. And then as for Nick Richards, his price is up a little bit. It's not a tough matchup against Toronto, but it just, we have so many other centers today. I don't think I'm really going to get there. And the 27% on FanDuel is kind of a lot of ownership. I was going to be interested in Terry Rozier, but sorry, go ahead.
No, people have loved to play him lately. It seems like Nick Richards, and it's just like, I don't know. He's been priced correctly, I feel like, and even when he has gotten the minutes, he hasn't like really dominated. It's a strange thing. I don't know.
Yeah, in my early FanDuel run, I got 5% Nick Richards and 10% PJ Washington, and so I'm still in there a little bit, but I feel like I'd rather find another play at a similar price, or even just pay up a little bit for a different center.
Yeah, and you mentioned you're about to say Terry Rozier. I'm interested in your thoughts on him because he has been someone minutes wise we kind of could trust. Obviously, in the last game they got absolutely blown out, but prior to that, 50 plus in 3 straight. What are your kind of thoughts on him tonight?
The 9,400 on FanDuel, like I wanted to play Terry Rozier, but 9,400, it's so hard to hit a ceiling outcome for him now. Even if he puts up like 50 fantasy points, it's a large slate. We have a lot of studs here. The 8,700 on DraftKings seems good at 4%. I don't mind taking some GPP shots there. And then the other guy, Brandon Miller, I mean, I'm not interested in the 6,800 on DraftKings, but 6K on FanDuel, even at that ownership, that seems fine. I'm pretty sure he got some blowout run in the last game. So even if Charlotte gets blown out, I mean, he's a rookie. They're interested in just, you know, letting him play. And so I think he's okay on DraftKings or on FanDuel. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And yeah, to your point, Terry Rozier on DraftKings, only 4%. I think I like that as well. Let's move on into Memphis a little bit here. Memphis, they're pretty banged up. So they're going to be without Luke Kennard still. They're going to be without, obviously, Ja. They're going to be without Derrick Rose, Marcus Smart. And so looking at the projected starting lineup, Jacob Gilyard is expected to start. I don't know if that moves the needle that much. To me, I'm probably looking at a little bit of Desmond Bane and a little bit of Vince Williams. Vince Williams pulling in as one of the better projected value plays, and he's going to be one of the higher owned plays. Do you see Ian the chalk here, or kind of what are your kind of thoughts for Memphis tonight?
Vince Williams is currently in both of my single entries for DraftKings and FanDuel. And then it was giving me Jacob Gilyard a little bit on FanDuel. I mean, he's 3,600. It's hard to argue with that cheap of a price tag. On DraftKings, I think he's 3,800. I mean, I don't know. If you can find a pivot to get away from him, I think that's good. But his ownership isn't like out of line. I mean, it's
Yeah.
30% on DraftKings, but
Do we really see him like getting those minutes? I mean, only projected at 22, and I would say at 22 minutes, he's not like a lock to dominate. I would say I'd rather get to an expensive Desmond Bain, knowing that he's going to get more usage, trying to hope for a ceiling game. I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts there.
no, I agree. So I think Vince Williams is probably the guy that we're most interested in. The model agrees
Yeah.
his value
Yeah.
score is kind of crazy. And then, I mean, Gilliard has a good value score too at 23 minutes. Maybe he has potential to play more. We've seen him play more if he's doing very well. But yeah, I think Vince Williams, then Desmond Bain, and then possibly Santi Aldama at his lower ownership if he
Yeah.
gets back in the starting lineup.
Would that, so if he doesn't start, you wouldn't be interested too much?
Yeah, and I meant at his lower price, not lower ownership. He's pretty chalky.
Yeah.
Off the bench, I mean, 55 and 5,400. It just, if he's still going to pull that ownership off the bench, then I'm just going to X him out of my player pool. But if he's starting, then it's probably okay.
We do have a comment in the comments saying that Gordon Hayward was ruled out. Let me see if that's updated data wise or not. That would just shift a lot more ownership, I think, to Miller and probably PJ Washington, right?
Yeah, I think I saw Miller was pulling a decent amount of ownership now, particularly on FanDuel.
Yeah. I will say, like, PJ Washington, I like him more if he comes off the bench. So I hope we get that news, and I hope it pushes down his ownership.
And now I'm thinking about it, they might have to start PJ Washington with Miles Bridges out as well. Because I'm thinking, Terry Rozier.
Thor?
Yeah, I guess they could start JT Thor. Yeah, I don't think we're interested in for DFS purposes, but
No.
yeah, they might do that because they do need a backup center.
And they just like playing him off the bench. It seems to work. So it's interesting that he's 13% on FanDuel and then 23 on DraftKings, basically the same price.
Yeah, and he has the eligibility on both sites. It's kind of odd, but I mean, like I said, I'm not in love with the play today.
Yeah.
But if he's going to show up a little bit, that's fine.
And then kind of looking at the I shouldn't say last bit of injury news. I mean, Dallas is kind of the biggest one to me. I'm seeing. I mean, I guess a little bit of Utah as well. We'll just touch on both of those real quick, and then we'll get into the position. So I'll pull up both. So Dallas, we know that Derek Lively is going to be out, and I think that's kind of the biggest piece of news with Kyrie still out and Josh Green still out, obviously. Are we still looking at Dante Exum, or are we looking at Derek Jones Jr. at all?
I've been off Dante Exum for a few slates. After he hit those 7 threes against the Lakers, I'm like, all right, this is just kind of dumb now. But I mean, he's 1% ownership. If you land on him a couple shares, I don't think it's the worst thing. I will say Rashawn Holmes, he's projected to start by Underdog right now, but he's questionable as well. If he does start, he's a flat min over on DraftKings. Right now, he's projected for 6% ownership. FanDuel 3,800, but again, I'm not in love with playing cheap centers on FanDuel. But the flat min on DraftKings at 3K, if he starts, it's tough because we want to play Isaiah Jackson, and so if we're playing both of them, Rashawn Holmes and Isaiah Jackson, I mean, like I said, if you nail the rest of the studs at the other positions, then it's fine. But I think we should have some interest in this guy tonight.
I will say, if he does start, it's going to be, you almost have to play him, especially if we get him up to like 20 projected minutes. That's just, you can't really pass up on that. He's a strong point per minute player.
Yeah.
Specifically on DraftKings. FanDuel, like you said, there's a decision to be made there. Maybe just the lowest owned player, especially if he gets up to 20 projected minutes.
Yeah, I would agree. And then as for anyone else on this team, I think Luka was. They reported him not at shoot around, but then I think they said he's probable, or he was at shoot around.
Yeah, he's good to go. They said.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then lastly, let's talk about Utah. So Utah, obviously, Colin Sexton, Chris Dunn, they've been kind of some okay plays with basically Utah just being pretty banged up. We did get news that John Collins is expected to sit, and then Lord Marketing expected to play tonight. Walker Kessler expected to play. John Collins, we do have him projected for minutes. Apologies there. But are we looking at Colin Sexton tonight? He's a little bit cheaper on FanDuel. Again, it seems like a FanDuel night. But should he be higher owned on DraftKings?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised he was coming in that low. I mean, he had a really good game last time. I mean, 7K, it's kind of a higher price tag, and kind of the same thing with whoever else we were talking about, Terry Rozier. It's harder for him to hit a ceiling outcome when his price is that high. But 6,300 on FanDuel, it seems pretty good still. I actually wasn't getting to him much in my build, so I was getting to Chris Dunn at 4,600 over on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's a good price tag. I mean, he's still pretty cheap on DraftKings as well. If he gets 25, 27 minutes, I think we're okay with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll be happy with that. So it's like at first I thought we weren't going to have much value, but now it seems like we have almost we have to make a decision, right?
I mean, Holmes, if he starts, I think that's what makes it more difficult because you got Gilliard, who I don't love, but we got a lot of soft pricing. Let's put it that way, like in the 4K, 5K-ish range where they probably shouldn't be that cheap.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's go ahead and move on into just the overall guard plays that we have today. Sorting it just by DraftKings guards right now. We don't have any more comments. If you guys have any questions, make sure to get those in. Luka is pulling in as the best play, then Halliburton, and then when we kind of just sort by potential really cheap plays that could go off, there's not much. I mean, the first one that kind of stands out to me is really Murray and Kobe White at 7.2 and 7.8, and they're not pulling in too much ownership, but I would say the ownership being spread out does feel correct.
Yeah, I mean, Kobe White, I'm still interested in playing him, but along the same lines, like it's harder for him to hit a ceiling outcome now. On FanDuel, I think it's okay, even though he's a little bit higher price. It's just, if he puts up that right around 40 fantasy points he's been getting on FanDuel, I'm not going to be disappointed. Where on DraftKings, it's probably not going to do you too well unless you nail every other spot. But I'm still interested in taking some shots on him. He was on pace to have a down game. I think he had 2 points in the first half or 0 points in the first half, and he still got there last time. So
it is kind of crazy that we could potentially be passing up though on a guy that's projecting at 38 minutes that's been that hot and like arguably still too cheap, I would say. So I don't want to jump off. I've been hammering him. I don't want to jump off just yet. I feel like he's still too cheap given the projected minutes.
And like this applies to a lot of the guys we're going to be talking about. 10.5-point spread. It's not quite blowout territory, but we are a little bit worried about a blowout, especially against Philly. I mean, Joel Embiid's just been the most dominant player I've ever seen, and so that is a concern. But on the other side of it, if Chicago manages to keep it close, Kobe White's probably having a good game, along with Vooch and DeRozan.
I would say that's probably the bigger of the reasons why it's that low, but also we just have a lot of good plays. Guard wise, maybe not great plays, but good plays. Mm-hmm. We already kind of mentioned Terry Rozier. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on a little bit of Jalen Brunson, maybe DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray specifically on FanDuel, 7.9, pulling in 17% projected ownership, going against Detroit. Pretty easy matchup, high scoring game. Are you trying to get there with him?
It's like there's just, there's so many guys that we're interested in taking GPP shots on today. It's going to be really hard to narrow it down. And I like Jalen Brunson. I don't know that I'm going to get to him today. And then DeJounte Murray, I think the price on FanDuel is pretty good at 7,900. And Trey, so Trey's pulling a bit of ownership, and DeJounte, I mean, he's not too far behind, so it's not like he's the pivot that we usually look at with him. Against Detroit, and then again in another high spread game, 12 points. It's blowout territory. Detroit is possibly the worst NBA team ever assembled.
Hey, Washington, now come on.
I mean, they're competing. I saw some jokes about like Washington is so happy Detroit exists because then they're not taking all of the like joke flack, right? I mean, the game last night was. To be fair,
Detroit has been banged up, though. I don't like Washington has been pretty healthy, whereas Detroit, I don't think they've had their starting lineup this year yet, have they? Like, what would be their projected starting lineup?
I don't even know what their preferred starting lineup would be at this point. But I will say Detroit, I think, has better young players than Washington. They probably have a brighter future, but it's just such a disaster for both of them.
But to your point, I mean, we have so many games that are projected to be blowouts. I got 3 games listed here that are over 10. Then we got 9. So that's not fun. And that's just the guards. Maybe a couple more games there, but yeah, not fun in terms of trying to predict where we should be going. I do just want to sort by ownership right now. So we got Gilliard, Quickly, Joe, Paul George, Young, Dennis Schroeder, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jamal Murray. I'm a little bit shocked at really a bunch of these high ownerships. Talk me in or talk me out of some of these ones here.
I'm shaking my head because I didn't even realize Quickly and Joe were going to be kind of chalk today. Like Gilliard, I understand
Yeah.
more so than the others. He's cheap, but like Quickly, no one's out. What are we hoping happens? He's a good price. I agree with that, but there's just nothing that indicates he's in line for more minutes today. It's not this game. This is one of the few games that's not close to blowout
Right.
territory. And then
Yeah.
Isaiah Joe, is Lou Dort out or something?
I thought he was actually questionable. Maybe let's just. No, he's good to go.
Why is Isaiah Joe just randomly chalk? Everyone's in for OKC. Like I understand he's a good price, but now with some of this news, we have no shortage of value. I don't think that like Joe. Again, it's like I've talked about this before, specifically with Joe. If he's pulling ownership, we're kind of hoping he has that 5, 6 3-point game, but we're kind of hoping with 1/5 of the field also looking for
Yeah.
the same outcome. And so I just if you can find any other players to play, I would prefer to do that.
All right, so we're on the same page there, apparently. What about Dennis and Dinwiddie there? They're both pulling in some ownership. I get the prices are a little bit cheap. We both have them, or they are both projected to get some minutes, 33 each. Seemingly good matchups for them. Is that just more or less soft pricing, good matchups, projected to get minutes type thing?
Yeah, it seems like it. And on most slates, I wouldn't hate it. Like I've been hesitant
Yeah,
to play Dennis Schroeder this year, but then he's burned me a couple times. Other times it's worked out. And then Spencer Dinwiddie, I think his price is actually kind of high over on DraftKings,
me
7,500.
too.
Just what we have on the slate. 7,200 on FanDuel. I mean, it seems okay. They're playing Utah. It's not a tough matchup or anything, and it's a close spread. But uh, I don't know. Just looking through my builds that I have, I kind of feel like I'm playing more stars and scrubs tonight, where I'd rather just take one of the value guards or pay up a little bit to guys like Trey Young or one of the Clippers guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I was gonna go like honestly more cheap, I'd probably go Sexton a little bit there, but that's more FanDuel. But still, it definitely feels like more of a studs and duds slate. I will say it doesn't seem like that's really worked out too much on these massive slates. Like the studs either don't go off as much as you would want it, or the scrubs are not hitting value or they are hitting value, but they're not really exceeding it. I don't know. That's just something I've noticed. Maybe I've just been hanging up on the wrong studs and scrubs.
No, you make a really good point. It's just, I mean, Keegan Murray, prime example. He's
Oh
around a
God.
6K player, a mid-range player, putting up 70 fantasy points. Like
Yes.
you can't predict that. There's nothing in projections that's, Keegan Murray's going to hit 12 threes tonight. And, a lot of mid-range guys, they're capable of putting up 50 plus fantasy points. They're capable of matching the studs. And so, it's tough, man.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'll get into this question that we have here in just a second. I want to finish up the guards. FanDuel ownership wise, it's basically the same. We do have Kevin Herter, who's going to be due for his 70-point night. So are we thinking about him as a play on FanDuel there at 4.7?
Oh man, that's I mean Darren Fox. I think he was present at shoot around. He is expected to play tonight. The 4,700 price for Kevin Werder is good. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to get there too much. 18% isn't terrible, but
Yeah.
I don't want to play anyone on tonight's slate. I want to go to all these low owned guys. So
All these no-name guys and whatnot. It's
right.
fun. But yeah, let's get into this comment. So it's about Charlotte, just kind of with the potential for it being a blowout and whatnot. Kind of what should we be doing in that situation? And like maybe how many players should we be on? Um, like what are we doing kind of with that Charlotte stuff? Kind of general rule of thumb. Rozier's projected to get 40 minutes now, by the way.
Yeah, I had to refresh it. He's down to 38 now. The model is still
Okay.
adjusting for that. But I was going to say, it's a good question if that's something that you saw in the model. So I mentioned Brandon Miller. He's probably going to be on the court no matter what happens in this game. At the end of the game, if it's a 30-point game, he's probably still going to be there. Maybe the last couple minutes he comes out or something. But like Terry Rozier, I don't think he played much in the blowout in the previous game. And then
No.
so that would be the one I'd be concerned about the most. But the rest of the guys, yeah, they probably have to play. They probably have to play, right? I mean,
Mhm.
JT Thor, Nick Smith. Who's Nick Smith? Leaky Black, Ish Smith. Like Bryce McGowan's. I mean, Bryce McGowan's 3,800 on FanDuel is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. We have so many options tonight, though. I'm not sure he's necessary. But I would just say Brandon Miller is the one that I would feel confident will be on the court no matter what happens in this game.
Yeah, and it could just be one of those situations where one of those backups does play well and just gets a lot more minutes than anyone else. Just ride the hot hand there. So it's tough to figure out for sure. But with that, let's go ahead and move on into the forward plays that we have on this slate. Looking at it right now, this could be maybe where we're trying to go more values or maybe even more balanced, but I don't know. I'm having a tough time paying up. They are finally pricing Anthony Davis and LeBron correctly. It took way too long for that to happen. Kawhi, maybe a little bit too cheap. Desmond Bane, I think, is a good GPP play. Julius Randle, maybe a little bit appealing tonight. Paul George in a good spot against the Pacers. Like all the good spots, but it kind of feels like the guards where it's kind of tough to really be gung-ho about a certain play here.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I saw a stat that good players against Indiana have been going off at a rate that you wouldn't expect this season. That's why before I even looked at anything, I was going to be very interested in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and James Harden too. He's a guard. And so those are the two guys I'm interested in. They are in the first game. And I talk about this if we're expecting late news. I don't mind playing the studs from the first game. They're going to give us more leverage than playing value from the first game and missing out on later value. But yeah, I mean, Desmond Bane seems fine. Julius Randle, like you said, he's playing the team that drafted him, the Lakers. If you want to give him like a 3% bump for that, I think that's okay. He's coming in at lowish ownership. And AD and LeBron, I mean, LeBron's pulling ownership on FanDuel. He's probably a good price, but yeah, it's kind of tough to get to any of these guys. But
so let's sort by value here. Just see if we have any better edges there. Right now, PJ Washington pulling in as one of the better value plays. Vince Williams, I think we both agreed we're actually okay eating that chalk. Bogdanovich for Detroit, pulling in some ownership, but not too much, 9 and 4%. Is coming in as the second best forward value. Again, it just seems to be one of those spots. Maybe we're not prioritizing filling in the forward spot until the end of our builds.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. It does look like we want to. So the last few slates, we've wanted to pay up at guard or get to the mid-range at guard. And today it seems like we have more guard value. So I do think we want to stay to the mid-range, to the studs over on forwards. And I'll mention, I said I didn't love PJ Washington today, but the model's telling us that we should. And so I hate to disagree with the model, especially on guys that are coming in as chalk. Bojan is very surprising to be near the top. Derek Jones, we've seen near the top of value frequently at low ownership. I think he's probably okay. And then Vince Williams, it's probably one of my more favorite pieces of value. I think he has to play.
He just feels safe too. And I don't like using that terminology or even like lock terminology in NBA and whatnot. But yeah, he just feels safe tonight at 4.6, projected to get 30 minutes. He's been playing well. I feel pretty good about that tonight. But yeah, Bojan there. I like him. Don't get me wrong. It's a high game total, 12-point spread. If they keep it close enough for long enough, he's probably going to be the guy that does it, that keeps it close. 9% almost seems too high. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, if I wasn't looking at the price, I would assume Bojan was closer to 6K, maybe 62, 6,300. But it is a very high total game, 247.5. It's only 1 point less than the Indiana Clippers game. And like you said, if they keep it close, Bojan. I saw people saying Bojan's their best player. It's Cade Cunningham, but Bojan's their second best player.
It's Jalen Dern. Come on, what are you talking?
Oh, okay. Bojan's their third best player. My bad.
They should trade him, honestly. Bojan there. I don't get why they still have him.
Send him to the Lakers. On that point, I do agree. You need a veteran presence, but Bojan seems a little bit too good to be that veteran presence. Bring in like Jeff Green or something.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. So do you want to move on into, we got some comments I'll see about that, and then we'll move on to center. So let's go Hero. I don't know about Tyler Hero tonight. Again, we're still worried about maybe his minutes being potentially limited. I mean, he played 8 in the last game. I think Bam played 10. We haven't projected at 29. I don't know how accurate that's going to be. That could be 36. It could be 20. I just don't have a good feel for that. Do you at all? Minutes?
No, I'm not going to try to guess there. I will say the 7,400 on FanDuel doesn't seem awful, but the DraftKings price over 8K, it's not something I'm interested in. I mean, I'm not playing Hero tonight, but if you do want to take a GPP shot, I think it's better over on FanDuel.
Yeah. James Johnson gave no. That's funny. We did have a question. TJ McConnell or I think that's Tyus Jones. Interesting question in general there. Tyus Jones, I'm guessing again, 6.6. little bit more expensive. He can go off in random games. It's really just dependent on can Washington keep it close. I honestly don't hate the idea of each night putting in like Tyus and Gafford into a GPP lineup, hoping that they keep it close. But other than that, that's all I'm doing with Washington.
So I'll say TJ McConnell, zero interest in tonight. It just he's priced for TJ McConnell to be out, and we've seen him sure have an okay game in these kind of spots, but there's just so many other guards we can project for more secure minutes than TJ McConnell that he's completely unnecessary on today's slate. And Tyus Jones, Jayhawk and I were talking about him yesterday, coming off the triple double. Like if they keep it close against Phoenix, Tyus Jones is probably a pretty good spot. Especially it was a short slate, we didn't have many options, and Tyus put up an even better score last night. He had like 60 plus DraftKings points. I do like this game, Sacramento. I'm kind of disappointed the spread is 14.5 points because I like Tyus, I like Kyle Kuzma. Not sure I like anyone else from this team, but I am interested in playing those two guys from Washington specifically.
I was hoping that Fox would be ruled out in that game, just so that we could be more interested in some Washington players.
Yeah, and Sacramento guys, I feel like we should have some interest. I do have some interest in De'Aaron Fox, but like if we're playing a Washington guy, I don't think it's necessary to run it back with a Sac guy. I mean, we're kind of hoping the game stays close, and I don't know. I mean, no one's pulling like crazy ownership. Kyle Kuzma at 12% on FanDuel at 8K. The price is good for him there. And then Tyus Jones, yeah, I know he's expensive, but I don't know. It's tough. We just have too many options today to really.
Yeah, at his price, I can think of a bunch of other plays I'd rather get to. I mean, we have seen this a couple of times with Tyus Jones where he gets the minutes and does really well, but the minutes have been so tough to rely on for Washington. And it does feel like they're playing a little bit better. It does. A little bit more consistent on a night in, night out basis from really Jordan Poole. And I mean, yeah.
I thought they were going to beat the Suns last night, dude. And then the Suns came back. Tyus Jones played 39 minutes last night. And so it's a back-to-back. Does he have the potential to play 39 again? Maybe. I mean, it's a pretty big jump from our projection. But if he does get 30-plus minutes at no ownership, might be more like this game is on the late slate, right?
Yeah.
I think he's probably an awesome night slate play if you're not getting there on the main slate.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that'd be an easy approach to go with there. And then I would say if you are playing Tyus Jones, I have to get to some Gafford, even if he's priced up. Honestly, I think that's just the way to go. That minutes will be there is pretty much it.
Yeah, I like that call.
And then kind of speaking of center plays here, I think we're going to try to get into at least 3 centers on DraftKings. And I say that because PJ Washington probably going to be a play that we get to. And they're both him and Isaiah Jackson are pulling in some ownership. On FanDuel, it becomes interesting because Isaiah Jackson is listed as a power forward. PJ Washington listed as a power forward center. Nick Richards is pulling in a lot of ownership there as well. Just a very interesting approach at center tonight on both sides because of how they have players listed.
Yeah, I think on FanDuel, I'm probably going to keep it simple, stay closer to the chalk. But on DraftKings, I think I'm going full contrarian because the centers I like are pulling no ownership. Going right back to Rudy Gobert, and then who's the other guy? I'm interested in Chet Holmgren against Memphis at 7,600.
Sorry, I know Ant-Man's questionable, and then I saw. Did you see the Ant-Man news today at all?
I did.
You did? Okay, that's what I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. But I was hoping like if Ant-Man were to sit potentially, would that raise your interest in Rudy Gobert more?
It would raise my interest in Karl Anthony Towns, and on one of the previous shows, I said I love Rudy Gobert tonight, and he kind of did nothing. He was on the court, he just didn't do anything. Cat went off for 40 plus. So I think Ant-Man out benefits Cat more than it benefits Rudy Gobert. But if he ends up in against Memphis, what's the spread here? We're at 1.5 points. Oh, they're playing Miami. I thought they were playing Memphis. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, even with Bam and again, this is like a deep GPP play, but I think we either just go chalk or play anyone really.
Honestly, looking at the center pricing that we have, it could be a spot where you do just kind of go with one of the more kind of mid-range plays like Chet Holmgren, to your point, not pulling in any projected ownership, should have a good game. He's the one that's going against Memphis. 7.6, that's drastically cheaper than on FanDuel. I actually don't mind that idea. Jakob Poeltl in a pretty awesome spot against Charlotte tonight. He's kind of expensive, but 27 minutes, he could certainly have a great game. Isaiah Hartenstein, we're not getting to anymore, especially with Isaiah Jackson right there, but we've got Marvin Bagley right there as well. James Wiseman potential to have a decent game, especially on FanDuel where he's significantly cheaper. So, and not pulling in too much ownership. So I kind of get what you're saying. I don't know. To me, I think I am eating the chalk here. I do. I just feel like I can get different elsewhere and find those points elsewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, and especially on nights like this where we just have so many options, I think we just trust the model. And Isaiah Jackson's top of value, PJ Washington's top of value, Clint Capella is showing up pretty close top of value. So is Joel Embiid. It's hard to get to Joel Embiid.
It is hard to get to Embiid and really Jokic for that matter as well.
And Jokic has been terrible.
Yeah, I mean Jokic against Dallas, especially with backup center in there, you would expect him to have a good game, but does make it more difficult to get to. Dwight Powell projected to get some minutes, a little bit of ownership. That's surprising.
Dwight Powell won me a big GPP one, so big fan of Dwight Powell. If the field, I'm interested to see how the ownership adjusts. This game's a little bit later, so we probably won't have the starting lineup until a bit later. It is possible Dwight Powell starts. It's probably going to be Rashawn Holmes, and then Dwight Powell could still play more minutes off the bench. That's what we have it projected right now. But it's like, if we're playing Dwight Powell, just pay up a little bit more for one of the other guys, I think.
Mm-hmm. So we got Jose asking, can you rank the centers? And it's difficult for sure to do that. I'll attempt to do it. So if Holmes is ruled the starter, he'd probably be my third favorite, but I honestly see it the way the model has it right now, value-wise, in terms of like priority rating. Isaiah Jackson, PJ Washington, and then from there, I do think it becomes much more of a toss-up. I personally do like Chet Holmgren a decent amount. That's probably where I could get unique 6% there. Maybe a little bit of love for Nick Claxton. That feels a little bit too thin tonight. So yeah, I can give you 1 and 2. That's simple. But after that, I don't know. What about you?
I'll throw out Marvin Bagley as well. He's pulling some ownership, 5K. His price is fine. I mean, he's got James Wiseman behind him. Like I said, James Wiseman, 4,100 on FanDuel. I don't think he's a worse player, but I prefer to just pay up for someone else. And then if we want another deep GPP play, and I don't know how deep this is, but Anthony Davis at 10-4 on DraftKings, power forward eligible at 3% ownership. I still think that, I mean, he's a good GPP play every single slate until he's 11K on DraftKings.
It's funny that probably, I said they finally priced him up. That is probably still too cheap, honestly. Like what's going on there? It's been literally the whole season that he's been too cheap.
And they gave us the power forward eligibility, which is awesome.
Yeah, I like that call, actually. That's decent. And you could get to him if you wanted to do so. So let's go on and kind of get into a lineup process for today. Using DraftKings. And so I think we should start out with the two kind of chalk plays in Jackson and PJ Washington. Are you fine with that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And then I just wanted to touch on Aldama and DK. I don't know if we answered that, but I mean, the price is good, but I think that the field is kind of assuming he starts. If he's not starting, then we've seen this so much on recent slates where guys we expect to start don't start, but they still pull that ownership. And it's just, if he's coming off the bench, he has less minute security. Like, sure, he's competing for less usage, but it's just, if he starts, I think he's fine, even at the price and ownership. If he's coming off the bench, I'm probably just going to X him out of my pool and hope that he pulls just a third of the field's ownership and doesn't work out.
Yeah, I think that ownership does feel like a little bit too high. I would say, like, honestly, 17, I'd feel that'd be correct. So like half the ownership feels more correct there. Mm-hmm. All right, so after PJ Washington, Isaiah Jackson, I feel like we should go one of the guard values or just another value play. Is there anyone that you would want to get to the most kind of value-wise?
I think Vince Williams makes some sense at small forward. I'm pretty comfortable. Like you mentioned, like we hate call players safe, but I do think that his minutes are safe.
Yes. If we get like 23, like he had done 2 out of the last 3 games, the other game he had 30. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. What about Gilliard there as well, or is that too thin? I kind of feel like it is too thin. What are your kind of thoughts?
I use the throw up emoji when someone mentioned him in the Discord earlier. But if he ends up being like the last piece in, he allows us to fit the rest of the pieces we want together. It's
Okay.
okay. But I'd
So
rather try and find a different spot.
okay, fair enough. Do you want to play one of these Detroit values that are kind of popping up right now, which is kind of shocking? Boyang or Jaden Ivey, or kind of pass up on them? Derek Jones at all?
Man, Jaden Ivey, his price seems good, but I don't know what Monty Williams is doing with his rotation. There's just no
Yeah,
kind of minute security. We haven't projected for 29. I mean, he could play 20. He could play 32.
yeah.
I like is I guess Bagley isn't really showing up on this first page of value. Have to scroll down one to find him, but I'm not sure how I feel about him taking up our second center spot though. Do we want to go with him or Rashawn Holmes maybe?
Yeah. I'm actually curious. Like, what's Holmes' minutes now since I refreshed it? Still 11.2. That is the thing. Like, if we get news that he's starting, and I don't know what's the game times on those two. Holmes is Dallas versus Denver.
It's a pretty late game.
It's a pretty late game, and then Bagley's pretty early typically, right? With Detroit, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could hold off on Bagley then.
I don't know. I feel like he is a fine play tonight at that price, even if he only gives us 22 minutes. Yeah, it's probably worth the risk because Holmes could do what Bagley does.
I will say I like him better. I like Bagley better on FanDuel Power Forward eligibility.
Yeah, yeah. Let's put Holmes in there. Try to get lucky, honestly. Like kind of GPP upside type play. Obviously, hoping he starts, but really, he could get blowout run in that game if it blows out. We don't think it will, but it could. Even if he gets 13 minutes, he could do enough there.
He's a really good fantasy point per minute guy. It's just a matter of him staying on the court. And can he guard Jokic? No, but who can? I mean, it's just if he just stays out of foul trouble, maybe Dwight Powell comes in and does bad too. It's kind of a disaster.
And honestly, it's a big slate. We probably will get some other news that pops up throughout the night in terms of a deep value play that maybe becomes safer, and we can roll with that.
Yeah, it shouldn't be tough to swap off him. I don't like the fact that he's playing in a later game is really good just for our flexibility later.
Yeah. So are there any studs though? That's the issue. Which stud do we feel most comfortable paying up for that isn't a center? Is it Luca? Is it Halburn? Is it Trey Young, who's kind of chalk? Is it SGA, who isn't chalk? De'Aaron Fox? Like that to me is the most difficult part. I'll tell you what I would like to do, but you have control over the next move here. I would say I like both Kawhi and Paul George, but
I was going to say Kawhi's my number one choice, so glad we're in agreement there.
nice. That's funny. What about Paul George, or is it just one or the other, or kind of your thoughts there?
So maybe it's like some kind of recency bias, but Kawhi's been fantastic, and his usage has been insane. He's really taken over games. I will say on FanDuel, I think I prefer Paul George just due to the price difference, but I think Kawhi even at the 9,500 there. But I think I want to play Kawhi on DraftKings just since it's harder to play him on FanDuel, and his ownership is appropriate. And I think either way, we really want to play good players against Indiana.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't even mention Zubac as well. I feel like he's a decent GPP play center wise as well, just for what it's worth.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to see Isaiah Jackson. There is some fear that these teams could go small, but the Clippers actually haven't had that tendency to go small like they have in previous years. So his minutes are a little bit safer than I think we're used to.
Yeah, for sure. So 7.6 or so left over. Pretty solid base, I feel like. Obviously, again, we can pivot off of Holmes when that news comes out. Kind of, what are your thoughts there? I'll say I like Colin Sexton. I like Kobe White. I kind of like Terry Rozier. Do you see any of those as good leverage spots, or maybe just hands off on those plays?
I don't know. I'm having a tough time getting with this 7K Colin Sexton with Lauri Markkanen back in the lineup. I think that I'd rather pay the 1K extra and get to Kobe White. And then Chris Dunn 5,300 on DraftKings. I'd rather play him on FanDuel, so I don't know that I'm going there over on here.
Yeah, I gotcha. That makes sense. We did get a question. Do you like Sexton? I personally think Sexton. I typically am someone that likes to like ride the hot hand, if you will. Like if I played a guy, I'm going to continue to roster him. It's kind of how I feel about Sexton. He was chalk, but he's good chalk. I'd say the previous slate's still fine. Thoughts on Desmond Bane?
I like him. Again, kind of like Sexton too. I like them both better on FanDuel, cheaper pricing. It's just easier to fit in more of these guys. 8,900 on DraftKings is slightly uncomfortable, but Desmond Bane has been borderline all-star this season. And And so the two, like I mentioned, the two Memphis guys I like the most are definitely Vince Williams and Desmond Bane over Gilliard and Aldama. And so if we're getting to Bane, I don't mind that at all.
Let's actually just try it. I feel like he, I don't know. He has a ceiling, like the multiple position eligibility. I'm kind of okay with that. Edwards is in. Glenn's asking who are the top FanDuel value plays. Show you that. Ivy popping up is surprising, but after that, not too shocking. Pricing wise, it kind of makes sense.
And like, I'm not quite sure what the rest of your lineup looks like, but when we're looking at like the FD value, I think prioritize the guys pulling ownership. I mean, the other guys pulling less ownership, like, yeah, they're good plays by the model. But it just, the chalk is chalk for a reason. I think that, so like Jaden Ivey's pulling low ownership, Bogdanovich is pulling low ownership, McGowan's is pulling really low ownership. I'm actually surprised he's showing up this high. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
But prioritize the guys pulling the ownership, I think, for the value plays.
Honestly, looking at McGowan's and like when you compare the pricing, like it is really shocking that he's not chalky on FanDuel. That seems like actually a pretty good leverage spot. But again, it's a massive slate, guys. I don't think we really need to worry about ownership too much. Like you're going to be different at some point.
Yeah, I think that unless you're just straight up sorting by ownership and plugging in those guys, you're good. Don't force in someone, like don't try to find the pivots to Isaiah Jackson just to get different. Like he's going to be in 100% of my lineups tonight. So
yeah, I mean we could eat the chalk with Senti Aldama for this lineup. He's probably like between him, Gilliard, and Quakely in terms of who's chalk right now. I probably feel most comfortable with him.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Can we even fit him in there? That's the question. I guess I didn't realize. No, we can't. That's a moot point. I apologize. Wait, Vince Williams, he's only small forward. Huh. 2 guards. We need 2 guards. 7K on average. I'm going to make the executive decision to go with Sexton.
Let's do it.
7K. And then 7K left over. Who would you want to close it out with? Got Poole there. We could go down to maybe Tyus Jones, Max Strus, Westbrook, Monk. We got Miller there as well, Brandon Miller.
Man, I don't really like any of these guys over on DraftKings. I love Miller and Strus on FanDuel, but over here it's a little bit tougher.
Let's see. Shooting guard. I feel like we could get a similar production type of play instead of Bane. Like Cam Thomas, Spencer Dinwiddie, at much cheaper. Paul George, to that matter. I feel like that would be the approach to potentially find a pivot.
I'm wondering, Trae Young was pulling a little bit of ownership. Are we interested in Trae Young? He seems to be a pretty good price if you plug him in at the guard spot.
Yeah, we could do that. He's fine.
Trae Young and then Colin Sexton in guard. And then,
and
shooting guard, even better. Yeah, 5,900. It's still kind of gross.
Ivy for now, I guess, since he is pulling it in as a good value, but I don't exactly love that. Yeah, that's the nature of the beast, though. We don't have to close it out.
Yeah, I think that like PJ Washington, Isaiah Jackson, Vince Williams seemed like, I guess, the guys to probably start the lineup with and then fill in guys around there. And I think we both love Kawhi as the pay up. So
yeah, I mean, if we were going to go really chalk, obviously could go Gilliard and then fill in later, obviously Holmes and whatnot. Whatever. We have 5.1 left over. Could make anything really work from there as well. Like in terms of Bagley, kind of still a chalky build, whatever. Kind of works, right? Like we don't love that chalk too much, but it's all right.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
All right. So that's pretty much it for the most part. Do you want to give a shout out to the Discord here real quick?
Yeah, we have the Discord live coming up in probably right now. We have Nick in there today. If you want a little bit more one-on-one, he usually gives like his core plays, goes through, the plays the same way we do, but it's always good to get another perspective. We're all going off the model anyway.
Speaking of which, thank you for on Friday with all the crazy news that we were getting. You were getting in the in and out news for the Friday slate last Friday. That was clutch. I forget who it was. Was it Boston and Miami? Was it? I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of the awesome part about the Discord, guys, is that everyone's in there helping each other. Yeah, crazy stuff has been happening NBA DFS wise lately before lineup lock.
Yeah, the Nemesis Cata slate. It's our favorite
Yes.
slate of the year, right?
He hit value, didn't he? Like he got like 14, didn't he?
He was in the winning lineup, and so
Was
it's
he?
like we talk about, these 3K plays, like Rashawn Holmes, good example tonight. He doesn't have to go off for him to be in the winning lineup, and I think those lineups even had one other guy fail. It's just the big thing was they hit a 5%, Jalen Brunson putting up 70 or 80, so like that
Yeah.
was a big thing. But
Yeah.
point is, like, if it helps you build the rest of your lineup, it works out great.
Yeah. Guys, that is going to be it for this video. Appreciate you guys all being here. Be here tomorrow at the exact same time. Tomorrow as well, when you guys get here, make sure to like the video. We always say to do that at the end. No, do that at the start tomorrow. That helps out the channel a lot.
Yep, we appreciate you guys being here. Thanks.